Confidence comes from within. That's the saying, right? But the saying is also, use what your mama gave you. So which is it? Most of us felt unsure in our youth, but is just not caring as we age the same as confidence? Plus, why does any of it even matter? Does confidence have utility? My next guest is a mental health therapist turned confidence counselor and dating strategist who takes a holistic approach to helping her clients upgrade their inner and outer image. Today, she's going to challenge the notion that you got it or you don't as we ask the question, could confidence be an outside job? Community connector, confidence dealer, image expert, Kimmy Seltzer. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I loved your introduction, by the way.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to have this conversation because I kind of feel like you're the queen of turnaround. You know, the turnaround from stylist or from therapist to stylist, from mousy to confident. And then there's like the turnaround when you're walking down the street and then people turn around and they go, damn, girl. So it's like all of the turnaround all at once.
Well, that was kind of my story and my turnaround because I went from frumpy mommy to hot mama, which really inspired me to get into this whole thing anyway. Because, before I got into this, I really thought confidence was an inside job, right? I mean, practicing as a traditional therapist, I did all the traditional things and the inner work, and it's super important. And by the way, I still think it's super important, but it wasn't until my own hot mess story is when the turnaround happened, as you put it.
I love that it's a hot mess story. And I want to hear more of your turnarounds, your specific turnaround story in a little bit. But first, I got to ask why, because I was that annoying kid in school that asked the teacher, like, excuse me, why are we learning this? Why is it important? Why does it matter? So why is confidence something that we should even invest time and money in at all?
It's a great question because it's funny. A lot of people come to me, obviously being a dating strategist, they'll say, find me a man, find me a woman. And at the end of the day, what they really find is themselves, right? It's all about, without being cliche, self-love. And within that, it all has to do with confidence. And, the way I see it, I define confidence in a very simple terminology. A lot of people have very intricate definitions of what that is and what is confidence. And I simply say that confidence is experience. End of story. Nothing else. Because I don't believe there's one person listening to this or watching this that is not confident. It's just that there's an area where you haven't had either enough experience in or positive exposure to. And how do you get it? You do it, right? Like over and over and over again. And this is so important in what I help people with in ways of finding love is that if you're not feeling very confident in flirting or, maybe you're just getting back out there after being in a long-term marriage, your confidence is shot. I mean, that's how I was. I mean, I thought I was a confident person before my turnaround story. And then when everything happened, my confidence completely shattered. And it wasn't until I learned how to pick up the pieces where I felt whole by doing things over and over again. Like when you and I first did podcasting, I mean, I don't know about you, but I didn't feel very, I mean, the funniest thing, my first episodes, I sound like I'm in a can because I didn't turn the microphone on correctly.
No.
Right. And so here I did, I spent all this time trying to get ready for my podcast. And so how did I learn how to be a podcaster after 7 years? I just did it over and over again.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds simplistic, but it's so important because when you feel good about yourself, you look in the mirror and you say, I got it going on. That's when other people do too.
Well, and you said experience leads to confidence. Is it possible, though, that you can create the illusion of experience inside but through imagining the situation and imagining yourself doing well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that phrase, act as if until you become, is absolutely true. And I know you have a little bit of like modeling and theater background, and so do I. And I know that like the importance of that rehearsal, envisioning the character, right? And being that person until you absolutely embody it. And you do sometimes have to fake it until you make it, but it's not And here's the thing that like rubs people a little bit differently, because they'll say, well, I just want to be me, right? Like I want to be authentically me.
Right.
And it's not about changing who you are, but it is about marketing yourself in a way that people get to know who you are as your confidence builds. And that's what creates, the love, the connection, all that stuff.
Well, I think pretending to some degree is helpful because, like, I don't have a theater background. I have strong theater vibes, so I could see where you would get that. People meet me, they're
Pretty,
like,
I just
"Oh, were you a
figured.
theater kid?" And I was like, "No, my goal in high school was to be invisible. Thanks for asking." So,
Oh,
as a 20-year-old, kind of, launched into the world, I felt like, oh, I can no longer be invisible. And so I would kind of pretend I was somebody else, like in my head, when people, hopefully they didn't know. I would basically borrow the confidence of other people, how I imagined they felt. And that pretending helped me try different clothes, which we're going to talk about in a minute. I can't wait to get into the nitty gritty. I've got different like neighborhoods of departments, if you will, of like hair and teeth and outfits that I want to get your practical input on. But I would pretending to be somebody else would allow me to try on a different outfit, to try a different hairstyle, to wear a bolder lipstick, to answer as though I knew what I was talking about. And I found that really helpful because soon I became the me version of whoever it was I was imagining.
No, it's real. And there's actually scientific proof that what you wear, what you put on increases your performance, confidence. I call it costume confidence. Actually, what you're talking
Ooh.
about is totally real. And I know this and I see this with the people that I work with when we do makeovers and even in my own story. Like I remember there's this one woman and she came to me to help her find a man, and she was an introvert and extremely shy. And she's like, I'm not the kind of person that puts myself out there. I don't need help with my clothes. I have like really beautiful clothes. I have Chanel, blah, blah, blah. She listed all these brands. And she's like, I just really need help, like talking to men and having more opportunities to flirt and all that, because all of that just was horrifying to her. And so she showed up because I do a lot of like infield coaching where we go out in the world and we flirt, and I also shop with people. So I'm kind of like Hitch meets what not to wear. She shows up and she's wearing, I mean, granted, yes, they're beautiful garments, but she had this black shawl wrapped all around her, and she was dressed in like beige and dull colors, and she was literally hiding in her clothes. And I said, look, I am so happy to like go out and help you flirt and all that, but we need to take care of your image. She's like, well, what's wrong? I think I have good taste. I'm like, it's not that you don't have good taste, but you're not marketing yourself and putting yourself out there saying, hey, I'm approachable. I'm open for business, and with that also made her body language clothes too. That's what I love about the clothes, is because it really can help you move in your body in a different way. And so anyway, we went shopping, and she's like, I can't wear color. It's just not me. I said, look, I just want you to do one thing before we start. For the next week, I gave her a homework assignment. I always do. I said, I want you to wear this red lipstick around town, like every single day as an experiment, and just see what happens and report back to me. So she's like, that's so not me. I said, that's exactly why you should do it. And so she puts on the red lipstick, and she comes back and she's like, that magic red bullet. I said, what happened? She's like, Kimmy, I don't know how to explain this. I walked out in the world and like all these guys started talking to me, like, just in the train station, walking out and about in restaurants, in the Uber, like, and she's like, that never happens to me before. And yes, there's a lot of psychology with color. We can talk about that a little bit later, but really there was this symbiotic relationship between what she put out and what she got back. Right. And that's the beauty of this kind of costume confidence, as I call it. When you wear certain clothes, it shifts the way you move in your body, which directly affects the signals that you send out to the world that you're like happy, that you're open. And all of those things really matter when you're trying to meet someone.
That's so interesting. Okay, so what's the difference between gaining confidence as you get older and just not caring? Because there are definitely people that are older, whatever you consider older to be, who go, oh yeah, I used to care about that. Now I'm whatever. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like confidence. It could be, but I don't know. I'm gonna guess not. So what's your take on that? How do you tell the difference?
That is such a good question. I love that you said that because, well, first of all, I am older, right? So I've been through the phases. I understand like the differences between, kind of that confidence that you build from within and also how you are on the outside, but also the not caring. I think the biggest difference is, well, I think there's almost like two different dynamics that can happen with that. I'll go over the first one. The not caring, if you will, I think can be a good thing in a way of like you're not worried about what other people think and feel. You're just going after what you want. And that is the ultimate confidence, right? Like when you stop really worrying about other people's opinions or comparing yourself to others, as you age and you get older, you kind of come in within and you're just like more settled within yourself and you're happier, and that's beautiful. Now on the flip side, the other scenario, and this is as a therapist where I can kind of see the difference, is that sometimes people say I don't care as a defense.
Yeah.
Meaning if a man doesn't like me for me, then forget them, and I see that a lot. And there's a little bit of like the boxing gloves that go on. And really what's happening there is either there's fear, there's mistrust, they've been hurt before. And so they'd rather say that they don't care and not do anything than put themselves out there and be rejected, for instance. And so you have to kind of feel into which is which, right? Like, and it's a personal thing. It's your own journey. And that's why when I work with people, it's so important for me to understand people's journey. We're all so different. There's no cookie cutter approach to this stuff. Like there was a woman who I worked with who had exactly that. Like she was in like these toxic relationships, a little bit narcissistic men that she would attract. And so she went out and she said that like, well, a man doesn't like me for me, forget him. I'm not going to like dress in a way or put myself out there in a way that's going to like change who I am. And I said, well, I get that. And the very thing that you want, you fear, and what you fear is what you want. And so now you just have this love shield on that no man can penetrate, right? And so she
Pun
kind of
intended.
recognized that, right? Exactly.
I couldn't resist. Sorry, Kimmy.
Oh my God, a little Freudian slip. Anyway, so yeah, and we had to work in like small chunks and increments to really like kind of chisel away some of that mistrust and fear that she had. And it started with just doing very simple things. And that's what I really want to highlight with all the things that we're talking about. It's those small little changes that will add up to the bigger win and overall confidence. You can't just like jump into this stuff and say, oh, I'm going to be more confident, and I do this with my charisma quotient formula that I can talk about too later.
And on the other side of the pendulum from I don't care, therefore I've given up, boundaries, don't look at me kind of thing,
Yeah.
is something else that I think you as a former therapist, current stylist, are just expertly positioned to comment on, and that's body dysmorphia, something that we used to really attribute to fitness competitors and bodybuilders. Now I feel like it's happening with Botox and fillers, and people who are unarguably beautiful are injecting themselves to the point they look like puffy alien Jim Henson Muppets. I mean, it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah. Well, oh gosh, this could be a whole other podcast, to be honest.
Right?
Because this
I
is,
know.
this is a big topic, and especially now with filters and social media, and we're all doing such interesting things with our images and looks. Interesting is a safe word, right? Like I
It
always say,
is such a good therapist
right?
word.
You can interpret that however you want.
I've
But
actually
what I
thought, like, sometimes when I see people, in public, and I just think to myself, well, that was an interesting
yeah,
choice.
it's just so interesting.
You are just, no, now, if anyone calls us interesting in the next couple of weeks, we'll be completely suspicious of them.
Well, unless they give you a 5-star rating, right? Like it's all
Oh, right.
about what it's paired with. I truly, well, first of all, like emojis or pairings that go with it when it's
Yeah.
written, or like your tonality, right? Because you could say, ooh, interesting. Or you
Yeah.
could say, oh, that's interesting. Like, and that totally two different contexts, and you can tell
Yes.
exactly what it
Yes.
is I'm saying.
So for the overdoing the Botox filler
Yeah.
thing, I'm just curious, like, I mean, I'd love just to hear your thoughts on it in general, but
Yeah.
I'm also curious how you as a stylist who's also a therapist who also lives in LA deals with women who just can't accept their natural version of their beauty to the point where I mean, you've seen some of them, right, Kimmy? I'm not exaggerating. They look like they're in Jim Henson's Muppet lineup. Like, it's bad.
What I want to almost start with is that whatever makes you happy is what really I think counts. However you feel, because there's truth to that. Like when you look at something in the mirror, nobody else sees it, but you see it, right? Like there might be something like a spot on your body or like a roll on your stomach that no one sees, but you do. And if there's something that you can do that makes you more body confident with that, that's going to affect the way that you move through the world. So I honor that, right? Like I'm never against anything. But what you have to be careful of also is that sometimes people overcorrect or overdo things in a way to make themselves happy, but then they're not doing any work internally. So that's why I'm super like, I guess, very careful when I talk about this stuff because I'm a therapist, because I'm a stylist. It both is very important to look at. It's about balance. But what I will say is that honestly, most people who come to me are not feeling very body confident. And that's why maybe they're stopping themselves from putting themselves out there and flirting with people, or also even just, putting their picture online when they're dating. Like that really affects them. So what I love doing with clothes is helping people feel more body confident no matter what your body is. And so I have like these free style guides, actually, if I can plug it, because
Yeah, do
it's
it.
such a no, it's such a great way to just get started and build your confidence. Just go to kimmyseltzer.com/style. I have one for men, one for women. And, for the women, what's really great is it's just measuring your bone structure. It has nothing to do with your weight, but how you're distributed, basically. So it's your shoulders, your waist, your hips. You determine what body type you are. And then the guide goes over what clothes flatter your figure and what clothes to stay away from. And when you look in the mirror with these certain kinds of clothes, it'll build your body confidence overall. Same thing for men. And men don't have as many body types as women, but I also go over just like little fashion tips for men, because men, please, like women are very visual. Like we love when you dress well. And I don't think men realize that as much. Right. And so again, because that's going to affect the way that you move through life when you see something in the mirror and all of a sudden you see something different. There's another story of a woman that I worked with who had covered the mirrors in her home for 20 years. She said, I can't look at myself in the mirror. When we went into the store, like if I was a traditional therapist, I probably would have done some cognitive therapy on her and really talked about her
Right.
body image. But that's not what she needed. Like she actually needed to see herself differently. And I gave her a pair of shoes and a jacket. And I told her to look in the mirror just 5 seconds. And she looked in the mirror and it went beyond that 5 seconds. It was like 5, 6, 7. And she just started crying again. But this time it was like tears of joy. And she's like, Kimmy, I've never seen myself look so beautiful. Now, she hadn't changed her body weight from the time she covered her mirrors till that moment, but she saw something different. And then I created a monster because then we were skipping around the store. She was dressing with the door open. We did a photo shoot. She loved the way she looked. She went online. She found her man. I mean, again, it's this domino effect that can happen.
Yeah. Well, and most of my listeners are paired from what I can tell, but I don't think this information and this idea is exclusive to people who aren't paired. Like, I mean, especially if you're in a long-term relationship, I second what you say that I love when my husband dresses, and he dresses nice like most of the time. But when he has like a new outfit, I just love it. And I love when I have, an outfit that I feel good in, or I've, I just feel put together, I guess you might say. And I just feel, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like laughing because I was about to say I feel confident, but and that's what this whole episode is about. Is I feel confident. So I definitely want to get into those 5 departments in a sec, but I want to hear your story because how you started gaining confidence for or helping other people gain confidence was you gaining confidence yourself. And I was so surprised to learn that you went from you barely got out of bed, and when you did, you were literally wearing oversized maternity clothes, but you were not pregnant. And basically, a good day was like, I was successfully unnoticed today. How do you go from that from being on the Tamron Hall show?
Oh my gosh, thank you. Well, wait, just to address what you said before about couples, yeah, like I always say, no matter where you are in relationships, you should always date your partner, no matter what, because again, what we're talking about, actually, it's not about the man, it's not about the woman, it's about you. And when you feel sexy and you feel, again, that confidence, that's when other people will too. If you're not feeling it, this, like it affects your relationships, it affects the way that you go out and try to find a relationship. So this is so important. That's why, like, I'm doing a retreat this summer. I decided to pivot. I usually do co-ed and, we do like dating skills 101, that kind of thing. But I decided to just work on sexy confidence because there's just this big thing right now where people just are not feeling good about themselves. And so I'm glad you said that. But yeah, I mean, it does kind of relate to my story because as I told you before, I really thought I was a confident person. I lived a very comfortable, I would say, traditional life. From the Midwest. I had the picket fence, the dog, the kids, the husband. I still have the kids, by the way, but you know where the story's going. And so I literally left my cushy life. We picked up, we moved across the country, we plopped down here in La La Land, Los Angeles, where I am now. And it was like overnight. And when I tell the story, like sometimes people are like, well, no, there was a succession of time that happened. But in my mind, in my recollection, that moment that we landed is when my life changed as I know it, and also just how I even am today. So it happened so fast because, we were removed from also our support system, anybody that would give us like help. It was all removed. And so there I was all alone in my new castle, not knowing what to do with my new life. And I'm a friggin' therapist on top of it. Like, can you imagine? Like, no, it was the worst. Like, because first of all, I felt like I should know better. And I did all the things that I taught people, I helped people with. I, went to therapy. I did the work. I was just, determined to like better myself and get my confidence back. But again, the reason why my confidence was shot in that moment is I'd never been divorced with young kids, right? And so I'm now supposed to go out and flirt with men and date, and I have my nursing bras on and these big, right, like black muumuus on, and yeah, really sexy. So I'm like, yeah, there's no way. And so what I did is I started getting just so comfortable doing the work. And this is the thing that I talk about a lot is that I fell into a state of analysis paralysis because people would ask me, they say, oh, well, Kimmy, are you going to go back out there and date? And I'd say, oh, no, you know what? I'm just doing the work. But what did that mean? I'm like rocking in a chair, reading books, like I'm not really doing anything to take action. That was the point.
But it's a very LA way to say that. So applause to you for assimilating successfully. Check.
Oh my God, I love it. I know. I admit full blown. And I wear Uggs now. So here's the thing. Yeah, in 60-degree weather, I never thought that would happen. The thing that was really surprising to me is that when I had that moment where I looked in the mirror, and this is what like changed it all, it hit me like a lightning bolt that I was horrified at what I saw. But then I also realized I wasn't taking action at all. And so I decided to do something very untraditional. I went shopping. This is where all of the shopping stuff came in. And I went into the store and I'm going to say, I, in my mind said, oh, I'm going to up level myself. And no, what am I doing? I'm putting black clothes in my arms, just like my closet was filled with black clothes. I'm like, no, it's new clothes. No. And they were all too big. And the personal shopper that was there at the time, she was watching me. I now refer her as my guardian angel. And she says, "Ma'am, I've been watching you, and I really think you should try this on." And she holds up this red dress that, well, it looked like 3 sizes too small in my mind. And I said, "That's so sweet of you, but that's not my size, and that's really not my color." She says, "Honey, that is your size. That is your color. Try it on." So it was like she hit me over the head with that red dress. And I thought to myself, she's right. I really need to do something different, and I need to feel something different. And so I slipped the dress on and I twirled around like Cinderella, and bam, there I was. Like, I was almost unrecognizable. And I'm like, wow, I hadn't seen myself in so long. So remember how we were talking about the costume confidence? Well, I decided to just buy that dress that day as a costume. I did not intend to like really wear it out with guys or anything like that, but I decided to do an experiment. And I said, all right, I'm just going to wear this dress everywhere, and I'm going to see just what happens to me. So I went to the grocery stores. I went to the coffee shop. I walked my dog in the red dress. And this is where everything came together for me. I noticed men starting to notice me, and I didn't like it. That's what really shocked me. So this whole time I was like remaining invisible with this black cloak on my body because I was scared. I was scared of being seen. I was scared of like men actually approaching me, because then what would that mean? Because really deep down, I didn't think anybody would really love me at the time. Who would love a young mom with young kids, like that. So I obviously there's like more to the story, but I realized there's this symbiotic relationship between the outer and the inner when it comes to confidence. And this is where my charisma quotient formula was born, where I'm like, wow, when you wear something and your body is different, it actually goes internally, and it's the quickest way to really start feeling better about yourself, because I was transforming. I was doing like a makeover on myself, and I really saw the impact that had both internally and externally. And so that's where, yeah, like my whole outside in approach was born. And so I work on the outside first with something I call style intelligence, which is your dressing, your body language, your energy, the way that you just kind of, your first impressions, if you will. Then I go inward and I work on emotional intelligence and how we express ourselves, authenticity, vulnerability, emotions, all of that. And then the third pillar is your social intelligence. And yes, that includes flirting, how we manage interpersonal communication, social comfort, all of that stuff.
I love the approach, and I'm so grateful that you shared that your outer transformation showed you something about the state of your inner world. And I think that's a great example of how clothing or just your appearance can reveal things about what's going on the inside, maybe a core belief or a fear or whatever that can be revealed. Like
Yeah.
you actually were kind of afraid, and you believe that men wouldn't love you. So man, that's so cool. I'm so glad that there's like a stylist that's a therapist, and it's you. I think that's so great. They really do go hand in hand. At first, because at first I thought, oh wow, that's a huge pivot, from therapist, traditional talk therapy, to you're a stylist. I thought, wow, okay, that I'm glad her midlife crisis worked out good. But actually they go hand in hand. They really are. I'm sure there's therapists who wish that they could also do what you're doing. And then there's probably stylists who wish they could address the mental health stuff a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that I've had these experiences. I always say, adversity are gifts in disguise. And it's not until you're through it, you look back and you're like, oh, there's the gift. There's now what I can give others. And I don't think if all that stuff happened to me that I would be here today. I might still be doing traditional therapy. And by the way, I still incorporate therapy in my work and infuse the coaching aspect too. So it's kind of a 1, 2, 3 punch in approaching, just helping people with their confidence and love life overall. And to me, it just makes sense, right? Like, it's just, again, we're all like puzzles, and there's just pieces of the puzzle that sometimes are missing. And when you find the void and when you find the gaps where you can kind of close that gap, and it makes you feel more whole, that's to me like where the magic is. And so yeah, like I love doing like these retreats and working with people in the field and doing makeovers. And I mean, like at the retreats, I bring in salsa dancers, and like we get into our body, because I think so many of us, no matter where you are in your relationship status, we get in our heads a lot. And
Yeah.
especially in today's society where things are going so fast, we forget about just being and being
Yeah.
in our body and being happy and connecting with others. And that's really like kind of now my passion with everything that I do.
That's so cool. I'm excited and ready, if you are, to get into our 5 departments.
Oh, yes. I'm so fascinated what you're going to ask me. Yes.
Okay, so these are just like 5 areas that I came up with that I thought, I bet Kimmy has something to share practical wise, right? Because no doubt, I have no doubt in my mind that people will listen to this and feel inspired to approach a refresh with their own image. And so I would love to give them a little something and to showcase your, expertise. So the first thing I have is when I think of outward confidence, for some reason I think of teeth. I don't know what that says about me, but it's what I think of. So how can people improve their smile to be more confident?
Oh my God, smile's such a big thing too, because it's actually something that I'm constantly teaching people with, no matter if it's like flirting or relating to people. And if you are not confident with your teeth, that's huge, because then you're going to go like this or just
Yeah,
not
yeah.
smile. And I mean, luckily, we're in a day and age where you can do so many things that even won't be that expensive as well. Like just getting those whitening strips. I remember there was a guy that I was working with, and he definitely needed an upgrade on his style. I will say that. So we went shopping, and I kept looking, and I'm like, God, this is such a handsome fellow, but his teeth. I mean, it was like a deal breaker, I'm sure, for a lot of women because they were very yellow. He had straight teeth, but they were just yellow. I mean, that's an easy like fix. So I told him, I said, have you ever thought about just whitening your teeth? And he was shocked because no one ever told him before. Like, that's what I love about my job is like I can be brutally honest with people and things that like a lot of people would want to say.
Yeah.
Because if no one else is going to tell you, then how do you know? It's hard to see yourself. So, yeah, it was huge because when he whitened his teeth, it literally like changed his smile, his demeanor. He started, putting himself out there more. And because of that, yeah, he started dating. So yeah. And I think obviously if you have a good dentist, there's so many cool things you can do with your teeth. If you have gaps in your teeth or if your teeth are rotted, like you can get a whole new pair of teeth nowadays. Like that's crazy. Like back in the day when we had wooden teeth, can you imagine? Like
Oh,
there was nothing you could do.
no, I don't have to imagine. Well, I do have to imagine wooden teeth, but I can imagine what we did in the 80s because I was in a bicycle accident when I was in the third
Oh.
grade and I had all my permanent teeth and off they went, sprinkled upon the concrete. And so my front 4 teeth are crowns and then I have like a partial thingamajig on the one side. So, and let me tell
Oh.
you, do you know what they did in 1987 when a third grader breaks her teeth? They give you adult chiclet gum like caps. They're not crowns. They like temporary were temporary, but they
Yeah.
were the size of grown-up teeth in my little 8-year-old mouth, and I had 100% overbite. I mean, it's a good thing I was
Oh.
a strong kid because I had like little biceps, because people were like, oh my God, Bugs Bunny. So, yes, I don't have to imagine what it's like. Maybe that's why
Maybe
teeth
you
and
are.
confidence,
Yes.
yeah, they go hand in hand. Okay, the
It makes
next
sense.
one is style. Let's say
Okay.
listeners want to try on for size, see what I did there, a new look. Like, I mean,
Huh?
that's kind of overwhelming. Where do they start?
I use this formula. It's very simple. Everyone can do kind of their own closet audit, if you will, by using what I call the 3 C's. And the first C is I just call it confident clothing. Like everybody has a go to outfit in their closet. Like if you had a social event tomorrow or a job interview, like what would you put on your body? And then take a look at that outfit and assess what is it about that outfit that makes you feel confident in? Is it the color? Do you like the way it feels? Is it like comfortable? Do you get complimented in it? And the notion is to get more clothes that have similar, patterns of whatever that is. The second C is the cut. And I mentioned before, if you go to kimmyseltzer.com/style, you can download my body type and determine what body type you are, because it could be such an easy fix. Like maybe the collar that you're wearing is just not right for you. So maybe your pictures look off, or even when you're in Zoom, or, whatever it is that you're wanting to better yourself for. Like it could be a picture, it could be a performance, but it also could be for your partner. And think about aspects of those clothes that'll work for you, and get rid of things that won't serve you. Like there was a woman who was very big chested, and she was wearing everything that had like a high collar, for instance, and she wore a lot of turtlenecks, and it made her look even more top heavy. And it was such a simple thing, by just getting more V-necks, that made a huge difference in the way that she looked in her tops. Okay, so that's super easy. The third C is what I call is just color. Color, color, color. I mean, look, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm wearing a bright pink, and you're in this lovely like burgundy red. It looks beautiful. Color is something that can, like, if you're single, attract the opposite sex. Like if you're a woman, always wear red or pink because it attracts men. If you're a man, always wear blue because that attracts women. So there's like different psychologies of color. If you are thinking about also, let's say for business, and you want to increase your ROI with your wardrobe, think about color. Like blue is a sign of authority. And if you're in a leadership position, like you should wear more blue. Now, with that being said, with all the colors in mind, you also have to know your skin tone, because like there's different kinds of reds, and like an orange red would look god awful on me, but I look better in like more blue reds. And so it is important to know that about your skin tone. But if you're the type, like you heard my story, if you're the type that always wears like these dull colors, or you're hiding in some way, just get like a red shirt, or even the red lipstick, and try it on and see the impact it has with other people, and then eventually yourself.
I love that. The third department that I want your take on, your hot take, is hair. I used to work in sales, and it was kind of this saying that everyone had, that if no one has complimented your hair in the last 6 months, then you should change your hairstyle. But with like people working from home, and I don't know if that's still relevant. What do you think?
That's a good, actually, I've never heard that before. I love that. That's so true. Well, look, I mean, when you're having a good hair day, it's a good day. If you're having a bad hair day, it's a bad day. Let's
No,
face
it's
it.
a
And
hat day. That's what it
it's
is.
a
You put a
hat
hat
day.
on.
Right. And oh my God, it's so funny because I have this like obsession with the cowboy hats. And I had one of those days the other night. And I'm like, thank God I had my cowboy hat. But men too. Men also worry about their hair. I think this is just both for men and women. And I would say, like, if you are not feeling very confident with your hair, definitely get a consult. Maybe you want to just lighten it up a bit, change the color is always fun. Changing the layers, take a look at, just what is popular these days, get inspired by celebrity cuts, that kind of thing. You know, this is actually, it goes for anything that we're talking about. Anytime you're stuck in a rut and you're doing the same thing over and over again and you're feeling blah, that's why I love the clothes and just what we have on our body, because it can make a big difference. It can refresh you. It can make you feel like sexy, youthful, and confident.
What about speech? You mentioned this earlier. Oh, this
Body
doesn't
language.
feel like me. It doesn't feel authentic. Speech is such a
Mm.
personal way that we behave, because it literally is how we communicate our inner world to the outer world, and it is very personal to where we grew up and our culture. So, how do we upgrade our speech to improve our confidence, but also still be authentic to who we are?
Speech is an interesting subject. Obviously, like I use the word charisma in my formula. It's the name of my podcast, Charisma Quotient. I love charisma because it's like this energy and magnetism that draws people to you, which to me is the crust of our confidence and connection. So when we go and look at speech and tonality, actually, charismatic people have a certain way that they talk. There's a certain tonality, there's a certain cadence the words even that we choose. And what's interesting is that tonality is considered a nonverbal communication. Like we all look at and talk about body language mostly, like in ways of what we see visually, but the sound of your voice actually is considered nonverbal communication. And it's a big part of how we view each other. So you could have really great content, for instance, or you could say some really smart things. But if you're delivering it in a way that is like monotone or something like this, it's not going to be very charismatic or really loud or not. Like we don't think about it sometimes, but it's almost like a song. And charismatic people tend to have variance in their tonality. And actually, podcasters do too. Like you and I, as we've been talking, we've been increasing when we're doing that. And then sometimes we bring down, and it's the way that we're talking. Now we do it naturally and we've been trained to do it. But if you pay attention to that and the way that you're like, maybe if you're trying to date people or if you're trying to network for business, it's super important in the way of like connection. So, and again, yeah, going back to the authenticity piece, it's not changing who you are. Again, it's about marketing yourself and so that somebody gets to know who you are. Otherwise, opportunities will pass you by. This is what my whole TEDx talk was on last year, because I don't think it's talked about enough in the way we put ourselves out there.
Yeah, I never considered tonality as a nonverbal, but you're right. When
Yeah.
a leader communicates a new plan for the company, for example,
Right.
and he or she has this very grounded, calm tone, almost like they've already lived it and they're a passenger from the future traveling back in time to let you know it's going to be okay. Like you just feel you feel something. You
Yeah.
feel trust in that person. You feel like, oh, they've got it handled. That is so fascinating. What about self-deprecating humor? Yay or nay on that?
I'm not a black and white answer girl. So that you have to know that
That's
about me
good. You're
because
on the
people
right show. We all
I,
are all about nuance
I,
here. So
I think everything lives in the gray, to be honest. And even with the, stuff that I do with people, because things aren't that clean. I
yeah.
think in the way that when you're self-deprecating, it could be good when it's used in ways of being really confident. And, like when you were doing it a little bit earlier about, your teeth or whatever it is, it's in the context of what we're talking about. Create a little laughter. But if you're somebody who's constantly doing it and there's no pairing of confident type of talk, then you're seen as negative, sad, victim, like that kind of thing. And it can also be very off putting. Something that's really interesting is I work with a lot of people on accepting compliments. Compliments are really big with, especially when it comes to dating. And if you're somebody who's constantly self-deprecating or punting a compliment, you also have to see what that's about, because there could be something in ways of, fear or deflection and not wanting to like talk about yourself or that kind of thing. But it can be very like not sexy too. Because like if somebody gives you a compliment like, "Oh, I like your eyes," and then you're like, "Oh, well, yeah, my eyes are changing a lot. I had to go to Rite Aid and get those readers," and it was like that's just not sexy. Like it almost hurts the other person's feelings when they're trying to give you a compliment. But if someone says, "I really love your eyes," and you say, "Thank you," different, right? In the
Yeah.
way of just like acceptance.
Oh, that's so good. The last one you've already alluded to, and it's body language. How
Yeah.
can people, I don't know, maybe the question isn't like, how can we change our body language? Maybe it is. But I think just being aware of body language is tricky. How do you help your clients elevate their awareness of their body language? For example, like your posture, right? Like I've always equated good posture with confidence, but I think the human form is changing because almost everyone has that shoulder impingement now
Because of the computer.
because of the computer. And like I see athletes that they have
Yeah.
that shoulder impingement and they're like little tiny little humpbacks. And so I'm like, well, they're probably confident kids. They just are on their devices a lot. So tell me about that. How do you tackle all of that?
It's huge. And it, again, not looked at enough. I mean, the research shows, and there's a little variance in some of the research, 93% of communication is nonverbal. 93%. So what you say isn't even as important as how you show up. So for instance, you could be internally a very like confident person or know a lot. But if your body language is saying something different, there's an incongruency with who you are, and people may not trust it, or you may have an intimidation factor. There's so many nuances. So body language is such a big part of what I'm helping people with. And what I love about it is it's an easy fix. It's just that we can't see ourselves, and so many people are focused on what to say in the conversation. This stuff is like instant. That's what's so cool. It's like just a little shift in the body can go a long way, where this internal work takes time. And I do a lot of these workshops actually, and they're all on different skills. And there's a workshop actually I have coming up in April on first impression, and a big portion of it is teaching about body language. And I talk about these like 5 body language kind of like hacks. And it's moving down the body and looking at the different aspects of the body and what you can do to shift it, but also some of the signals that you're sending that make a really big impact on how you're coming across. And I will say that the face is probably the biggest thing to really pay attention to. The whole notion of RBFs, resting bitch face.
Oh,
I mean, that is
yes.
real. And I don't even like to say that that's just women. I think men have it too. And I call it resting grimace face, for men,
Mhm.
is that we all get this like serious look on our face, and maybe we're like thinking about a lot. And I work a lot with like, introversions and introverted behavior. And also just like people who are in their head a lot, maybe more analytical in nature, high achievers. And what I see is that when you're thinking a lot, you get a look on your face, and just being more mindful of smiling and making eye contact and softening the face can make a big impact on how you're coming across, even if you're introverted. Again, it's kind of like a hack for you,
Yeah.
just to get that serious look off your face and just like smile. And again, you don't even have to say anything. Just smiling will go a really long way. So yeah, it's a big part of what I do, but also it's fun because it's things that you can
Yeah.
really like measure.
Yeah, well, I mean, a new start, there's a novelty to newness, right? So
Yeah.
that's part of what makes it really fun. I'm so sad that we're out of time. As we wrap up, I want to say that I think there is a temptation out there, right, to do the work, as you mentioned in the beginning, privately and like emerge from the cave as an ethereal glowing being like Adele in 2022 and be like, this was my glow up, right? But the real thing is that you have to ask for help. So how can listeners get your help, and what is the freestyle guide? Where can they find that? Because you mentioned that earlier.
Well, I mean, again, my name is Kimmy Seltzer, KimmySeltzer. And if you go to kimmyseltzer.com, that's where you can find everything. All my social handles are at Kimmy Seltzer, so it's super easy. My podcast is Charisma Quotient, and just a couple just fun resources. If you go to the style guide, and you can pick that up at kimmyseltzer.com/style, you can get started with some of these style hacks that we've been talking about. But also, if you're single looking to mingle, I do these monthly workshops. And depending on when you're listening to this, I have it happen every month. If you just go to stophatingdating.com, that's stophatingdating.com, it'll show you when my next workshop is. And then you can really start practicing some of the stuff. It's co-ed, it's super fun, and we actually do a lot of practice in there.
Thank you so much for this super fun conversation. I loved that it gave me an excuse to see you again. And hopefully, I'll see you again in real life in the next year or so. I think we'll run into each other at a conference, I'm sure.
I hope so. Thank you so much for having me.